The alarm clock buzzed at exactly 5:30 in the morning, just like it did every single day. Patricia reached over and silenced it before it could wake her teenage son in the next room. She sat up in the darkness of her small bedroom, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Another day, another early start. She'd been working as a housekeeper for Mr. Richardson for almost 3 years now. 3 years of arriving before sunrise. 3 years of making sure everything was perfect before he even opened his eyes. It was a good job, better than the 2 she'd juggled before this one. The pay was decent. The hours were long but consistent. And Mr. Richardson mostly left her alone to do her work by 6 in the morning. Patricia was already at the penthouse, using her key card to enter through the service entrance. The city was still dark outside, but up here on the 42nd floor, she could see the first hints of dawn creeping across the horizon. She moved quietly through the massive apartment, turning on lights, checking that everything was in its place. Mr. Richardson was what people called a self-made billionaire. He'd started with nothing and built some kind of tech company that now had offices in 12 countries. Patricia didn't fully understand what the company did, something about software for hospitals, but she knew it made him incredibly wealthy. Wealthy enough to own this entire floor of one of the city's most expensive buildings. She started her morning routine the same way she always did. First, fresh flowers in the main hallway. Mr. Richardson liked white orchids, replaced every 3 days. Then she'd brew his coffee, a specific blend he ordered from somewhere in Colombia. While it brewed, she'd check the dining room, make sure his newspaper was positioned exactly right, and prepare his breakfast tray. Patricia took pride in her work. She'd raised 2 kids on her own after her husband passed away 7 years ago. Her daughter was in community college now, studying to be a nurse. Her son was a junior in high school, smart as a whip, already talking about engineering school. Everything she did, every early morning and late night, was for them. She was arranging the orchids when she happened to glance at the security monitor mounted discreetly in the hallway. Mr. Richardson had cameras throughout the building, including the private garage downstairs where he kept his cars. It was part of her job to occasionally check these monitors, make sure nothing was out of place. That's when she saw something that made her freeze. The driver, Vincent, was standing by the black sedan. He'd only been working for Mr. Richardson for about 8 months, replacing the previous driver who'd retired. Vincent seemed nice enough, always polite to Patricia, always on time. But right now, through that security camera, she watched him reach inside his jacket and pull something out. It was metallic, dark, and even through the grainy security footage, Patricia recognized it immediately. A gun. Her heart started pounding. Vincent looked around the garage, checking to make sure he was alone, then examined the weapon carefully. He checked something on it. Patricia couldn't tell exactly what, then slipped it back inside his jacket. She gripped the edge of the table where the monitor sat, her mind racing. Why would Vincent have a gun? Mr. Richardson had a whole security team. The drivers weren't armed. That's what the security people were for. So why did Vincent have a weapon hidden in his jacket? Patricia's hands started shaking. She looked at the clock. 6:40. Mr. Richardson would be up in 5 minutes. He had a big meeting this morning, something about investors. She'd heard him on the phone yesterday, talking about how important it was. Vincent would be driving him to that meeting in just over an hour. What should she do? Call security? But what if she was wrong? What if it wasn't actually a gun? The camera quality wasn't perfect. Maybe it was something else, something innocent. If she caused a big scene and it turned out to be nothing, she could lose her job. Mr. Richardson paid her well, and she needed this job. Her son's college applications were coming up, and she'd been saving every extra penny. But what if she was right? What if Vincent really did have a gun, and he was planning something terrible? What if she stayed quiet and something happened to Mr. Richardson. Patricia moved to the kitchen on shaky legs and started preparing breakfast, trying to think clearly. She couldn't just do nothing. If something happened, and she'd seen that gun and said nothing, she'd never forgive herself. But she also couldn't just run up to Mr. Richardson and announce that his driver had a weapon. The penthouse had intercoms everywhere. There were cameras in most rooms. What if Vincent wasn't working alone? What if someone else on the staff was involved? If she wasn't careful, she could put both herself and Mr. Richardson in danger. She carried the breakfast tray to the dining room, her mind spinning through different scenarios. Mr. Richardson was already there, right on schedule, wearing one of his expensive suits. He was scrolling through something on his tablet, barely acknowledging her presence as she set down his coffee and croissant. Patricia stood there for a moment, watching him. He was a serious man, always focused on business. In 3 years, they barely had any personal conversations. She knew he'd lost his wife to cancer about 5 years ago, knew he had a grown daughter who lived in California. But that was about it. He was polite but distant, the kind of boss who saw you as part of the furniture. But she couldn't let that matter right now. "Mr. Richardson," she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "I notice your tie has a loose thread. Would you like me to fix it before you leave for your meeting?" He didn't even look up from his tablet. "It's fine, Patricia." "Thank you." She took a small breath. She had to try harder. "Sir, I really think it needs attention. It's quite noticeable, right at the front. You wouldn't want to meet with important investors looking anything less than perfect." That got his attention. Mr. Richardson was very particular about his appearance. Everyone on the staff knew that. But Patricia also knew she'd never push back on anything he'd said before. She'd always been quiet, agreeable, never made waves. He looked up at her, and she saw something flicker in his eyes. Curiosity, maybe. Or confusion about why his normally silent housekeeper was being so insistent about a tie. "All right," he said slowly, setting down his tablet and standing up. "If you think it's that important." Patricia's heart was hammering as she stepped closer to him. This was it. She reached for his tie with trembling fingers, pretending to examine it closely. She leaned in, close enough that she could speak in barely a whisper, close enough that no camera microphone could pick up her words. "Don't go to your meeting," she said, her voice so quiet it was almost just breath. "Your driver has a gun. I saw it on the garage camera. Please, sir, you need to trust me on this." She felt Mr. Richardson's whole body go tense under her hands, but his face didn't change. He was good at that, she realized, keeping his reactions hidden. Years of business negotiations had probably taught him how to control his expression, even when surprised. "Are you absolutely certain about what you saw?" He whispered back, his lips barely moving. Patricia's hands were still on his tie, still pretending. Richardson stepped back from Patricia smoothly, as if she'd just finished fixing his tie. His face showed nothing, absolutely nothing, but she could see his mind working behind his eyes. He straightened his jacket and gave her a small nod. "Thank you, Patricia," he said in his normal voice, the one he used when other people might be listening. "I appreciate your attention to detail." Then he walked back to the table and sat down, picking up his coffee cup like nothing had happened. But Patricia noticed his hand wasn't quite steady. She stood there for a moment, not sure what to do next, until he spoke again. "Actually, I've been thinking," he said, still looking at his tablet. "I believe I'll work from home this morning. Please inform Vincent that I won't need the car today. Tell him something came up, a conference call I can't miss." Patricia felt a wave of relief wash over her. He believed her. He actually believed her. "Yes, sir. Right away." She picked up the breakfast tray and headed toward the kitchen, her legs feeling weak. As she passed through the hallway, she saw Mr. Richardson pull out his phone and make a call. his voice too low for her to hear Dot in the kitchen. Patricia leaned against the counter and took a deep breath. Her whole body was shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. She'd done it. She'd warned him. But what happened next? Would they call the police? Would Vincent realize something was wrong? She pulled out her own phone and sent a quick text to the garage intercom system, the one the staff used to communicate. Mr. Richardson won't need the car this morning. Schedule changed. We'll notify you if needed later. A moment later, her phone buzzed with Vincent's response. Understood. Just 2 words, but Patricia stared at them, wondering what he was thinking right now. Was he suspicious? Did he know something was wrong? About 20 minutes later, Patricia was organizing the linen closet when she heard the elevator. She stepped into the hallway and saw a man she'd never met before walking toward Mr. Richardson's study. He was Asian, maybe in his 40s, wearing a dark suit. He moved like someone who knew how to handle himself, and Patricia immediately guessed he was security. Mr. Richardson must have called him. She went back to her work, trying to stay out of the way. Her hands were still trembling as she folded towels. Every few minutes, she'd glance at her phone, half expecting some kind of emergency alert. But everything stayed quiet. About an hour passed. Patricia was dusting the library when Mr. Richardson appeared in the doorway. The security man was with him. Patricia, this is David Chen. He's my head of security. I've told him what you saw this morning. David stepped forward and gave her a respectful nod. Ma'am, I need to ask you some questions about exactly what you observed. Would you mind walking me through it? Patricia's mouth went dry. Of course. They went to the hallway where the security monitor was mounted. Patricia showed David the garage camera feed and explained exactly what she'd seen and when. David took notes on his phone, asking her specific questions. What time was it? How long did Vincent have the gun out? Did he seem nervous or calm? Did anyone else appear on the camera? He seemed calm, Patricia said, remembering. Like he was just checking it, making sure it was ready. That's what scared me. He wasn't nervous at all. David nodded slowly. That fits with someone who's done this before. Someone professional. The word sent a chill down Patricia's spine. Professional. That meant Vincent wasn't just a driver who happened to have a gun. This was planned. Can you pull up the footage from this morning? David asked. Patricia shook her head. I don't have access to save or replay the feeds. I can only watch them live. Only Mr. Richardson and the security office can access the recordings. That's fine. I'll pull it from our main system. David looked at Mr. Richardson. Sir, I think we need to bring in the police. This is beyond what we should handle internally. Mr. Richardson rubbed his jaw, thinking. Agreed, but we need to be careful. If Vincent suspects anything, he might run, or worse. I have a contact at the police department, David said. Someone who can handle this quietly. I'll make the call now. Patricia watched them move back toward the study, talking in low voices. She stood there in the hallway, feeling like she'd just stepped into some kind of thriller movie. This wasn't supposed to be her life. She was a housekeeper, a single mom who just wanted to do her job and take care of her kids. But she'd seen something, and now there was no going back. She tried to continue with her normal routine, but her mind kept wandering. What was Vincent planning? Was he going to shoot Mr. Richardson in the car? Stage an accident? The morning meeting was supposed to be about investors. Why would someone want to hurt Mr. Richardson over business? About 90 minutes after David arrived, the service elevator opened again. 2 people stepped out, a man and a woman, both dressed casually in jeans and jackets. But Patricia could tell immediately they were police officers. Something about the way they carried themselves, the way their eyes scanned everything. David met them and led them toward the study. Patricia caught a glimpse of Mr. Richardson showing them something on a laptop, probably the security footage. The woman officer was taking notes while the man studied the screen intently. Patricia was in the kitchen when David came to find her. "The detectives want to talk to you," he said gently. "Don't worry, you're not in any trouble. They just need to hear your account directly." She followed him back to the study, wiping her damp palms on her uniform. The two officers introduced themselves as Detective Moore and Detective Williams. They were kind, asking her to sit down and take her time. Patricia told them everything again, from the moment she'd glanced at the security monitor to warning Mr. Richardson about the tie. Detective Moore asked her the same kinds of questions David had, while Detective Williams watched her face carefully, probably trying to see if she was telling the truth. "You did the right thing coming forward," Detective Williams said when she finished. "A lot of people would have convinced themselves they didn't see what they saw, or that it wasn't their business." "I have kids," Patricia said quietly. "If something happened to Mr. Richardson and I'd stayed quiet, I couldn't live with that." The detectives exchanged a look. Then Detective Moore spoke. "We're going to need to question Vincent, but we need to do it carefully. We don't know yet if he's working alone or if there are others involved. Mr. Chun is going to call Vincent and ask him to come up to the penthouse. Say there's an issue with the car maintenance logs that need to be reviewed." Patricia's eyes widened. "He's coming here?" "We'll be ready," Detective Williams assured her. "We need you to stay in a different part of the apartment while this happens. Can you do that?" Patricia nodded, even though her heart was racing again. 20 minutes later, she was in the far bedroom that served as a storage room, the door closed. She could hear voices in the distance, muffled and indistinct. She sat on a box of old linens, her phone clutched in her hand, and waited. Suddenly, she heard shouting. A man's voice, angry and loud. Then a crash, like furniture being knocked over. Patricia jumped to her feet, her heart pounding. More shouting, multiple voices now. Then silence. The silence was somehow worse than the noise. She stood there, frozen, staring at the door. Minutes passed, feeling like hours. Finally, there was a soft knock. "Patricia?" "It's David. You can come out now." She opened the door with shaking hands. David was standing there, and he looked tired but relieved. "It's over. They have him." Patricia's knees almost gave out. "What happened?" "When we asked Vincent to empty his pockets, he tried to run. Made a grab for his jacket. The detectives were ready for it. They tackled him before he could reach the weapon." David shook his head. "You were right. He had a loaded gun, and based on his reaction, he wasn't planning anything good." Patricia put her hand over her mouth. It was real. All of it was real. If she hadn't looked at that monitor at exactly the right moment, if she hadn't found the courage to speak up, Mr. Richardson might be dead right now. "Is Mr. Richardson okay?" she asked. "He's fine. Shaken up, but fine. He wants to talk to you." "Then G to work on an invisible thread." "Yes, sir. I'm certain. It was a gun, and he was checking it like he was getting ready to use it." Patricia found Mr. Richardson in his study, standing by the window with his hands in his pockets, staring out at the city below. He turned when she entered, and for the first time since she'd started working for him, she saw real emotion on his face. He looked exhausted and shaken, but also something else. "Grateful, Patricia," he said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs. "Please, sit down." She perched on the edge of the chair, uncomfortable with this sudden change in their relationship. In 3 years, she'd never sat down in his presence unless she was eating her lunch in the staff room. "I don't even know where to begin," Mr. Richardson said, sitting down across from her. "You saved my life today. Do you understand that? If you hadn't seen what you saw, if you hadn't had the courage to tell me, I would have gotten into that car this morning." Patricia's throat felt tight. "I just did what anyone would do, sir. Enter. No, his voice was firm. Most people would have second-guessed themselves, convinced themselves they didn't really see a gun, or that it wasn't their place to say anything, or they would have been too afraid of losing their job to speak up. He leaned forward. You saw danger and you acted, even though it could have cost you everything. That takes courage. Before Patricia could respond, Detective Moore knocked on the open door. Mr. Richardson, we're going to take Vincent to the station now. I wanted to update you on what we know so far. Please, Mr. Richardson said, gesturing for the detective to continue. Patricia should hear this too. She's earned that right. Detective Moore nodded and pulled out a small notebook. Vincent's real name is Vincent Morrison. That part was true. But his background check was clean because someone very good at creating false identities did the work. We found a burner phone in his car with messages from an unknown number. We're working on tracing it now. What was he planning? Mr. Richardson asked quietly. He's not talking yet, but based on the messages, it appears the plan was to stage a car accident on your way to the meeting. The gun was insurance, in case the accident didn't finish the job. Detective Moore's expression was grim. This was a professional hit, Mr. Richardson. Someone wanted you dead. Patricia felt cold all over. A professional hit. Those were words from movies and crime shows, not from real life. Not from her life. Do you have any idea who would want to harm you? Detective Williams asked, joining them in the study. Mr. Richardson was quiet for a long moment. I've made enemies in business. When you're successful, that comes with the territory. But murder? He shook his head. There's a company, Nexus Corporation. We've been in competition for a major healthcare contract. Things have gotten heated, but I never imagined. We'll look into it, Detective Moore said. In the meantime, you need to increase your security. Don't go anywhere alone, and definitely don't trust anyone new in your circle until we figure out who's behind this. After the detectives left with Vincent in handcuffs, the penthouse felt strange and quiet. David was making phone calls, arranging for additional security personnel. Mr. Richardson had retreated to his study to contact his lawyers. Patricia stood in the kitchen, staring at the breakfast dishes she still needed to wash, and wondered how her normal Tuesday had turned into this. Her phone buzzed. A text from her daughter. Hey, Mom, can I stay late at school for study group? Patricia stared at the message, at this little piece of her normal life, and suddenly tears started running down her face. She'd been holding it together all morning, staying calm and focused, but now the reality of what had almost happened crashed over her like a wave. If she hadn't looked at that monitor, if she'd been in a different part of the penthouse, if she'd convinced herself she was seeing things, Mr. Richardson would be dead, and she would have known she could have prevented it. Patricia? She quickly wiped her eyes and turned. Mr. Richardson was standing in the kitchen doorway, concern on his face. I'm sorry, she said, embarrassed. I'm fine. I just need a minute. You're not fine, he said gently. And you don't need to apologize. You've been through something traumatic today. He paused. Why don't you take the rest of the day off? Go home. Be with your family. Patricia shook her head. I'd rather stay busy, if that's okay. If I go home right now, I'll just sit there and think about everything. Mr. Richardson nodded, understanding. Then let me at least make you some tea. Sit down. It was surreal, watching her billionaire boss make tea. He moved around the kitchen somewhat awkwardly, clearly not used to being in there, but he managed to find the kettle and the tea bags. He set a cup in front of her and sat down at the kitchen table, something else she'd never seen him do. Tell me about your family, he said. Patricia blinked, surprised. Sir, in 3 years, I've never asked. That's my fault. I've been so focused on business that I've forgotten the people around me are actual people with lives and families. He wrapped his hands around his own teacup. You mentioned you have kids. Tell me about them." So Patricia did. She told him about her daughter, studying to be a nurse, working part-time at a pharmacy to help pay for school. About her son, the straight-A student who wanted to be an engineer, who stayed up late working on robotics projects. About her husband who died 7 years ago, and how she'd worked 3 jobs for a while to keep the family afloat until she'd found this position. Mr. Richardson listened. Really listened, asking questions and seeming genuinely interested. It was the longest conversation they'd ever had. "Your children are lucky to have you," he said when she finished. "And I'm very lucky you were here this morning." Over the next few hours, more people arrived. Lawyers in expensive suits, carrying briefcases. More security personnel who David interviewed and positioned throughout the building. Mr. Richardson's daughter called from California, and Patricia could hear his voice from the study, reassuring her that he was fine, that everything was under control. By late afternoon, Detective Moore called with an update. They'd traced the burner phone. The messages had come from someone inside Nexus Corporation, just as Mr. Richardson had suspected. But there was more. Vincent had decided to talk, probably hoping for a deal, and he'd named 2 other people. One was a junior security guard who'd help Vincent get access to certain areas of the building. The other was someone in Mr. Richardson's own legal department who'd been feeding information to the competition. 2 more people, Mr. Richardson said after hanging up the phone, his voice hollow. 2 people I trusted, working right under my nose. Patricia was cleaning the study, but she stopped and looked at him. "You can't blame yourself for trusting people, sir. That's what makes you human. Those people made their choices." He looked at her, and something in his expression softened. "When did you become so wise?" "When I had to raise 2 kids by myself," she said simply. "You learn pretty quick that the world has good people and bad people, and sometimes they look exactly the same on the outside. All you can do is trust your instincts and hope for the best." "Your instincts certainly worked today," he said as evening approached. David came to inform Mr. Richardson that the additional security team was in place. There would be armed guards at all entrances, new camera systems being installed, and a complete review of all current staff. "Sir," David said, looking uncomfortable, "I need to apologize. I vetted Vincent personally. I should have caught something. He was planted by professionals who knew how to create a clean identity," Mr. Richardson said. "This wasn't your fault, David. If anyone's to blame, it's me for making enemies who would go this far." Patricia watched this exchange and thought about how the world worked. Mr. Richardson had money and power, but that hadn't protected him. In the end, it was just her, a housekeeper with no special training, who'd happened to look at a security monitor at the right time. Sometimes the smallest moments changed everything. That evening, as Patricia was finally getting ready to leave, Mr. Richardson stopped her in the hallway. "I want to give you a reward," he said. "A substantial one. You saved my life, and that deserves recognition." Patricia felt her face get hot. "Sir, I can't accept money for doing the right thing." "It's not about doing the right thing," he said firmly. "It's about acknowledging that your courage and quick thinking prevented a tragedy. Please, let me do this."